Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We are buzzing as always. It's your host, Matt Zahab, still coming in hot from Mexico, where all is good, except today the weather is brutal. And let me tell you folks, when it rains, it pours here. No North American, Toronto, USA rain, where it just rains for a little bit. It is absolutely pouring. And we actually have some sun coming out. Harry brought some good weather. We love to see that. Speaking of Harry, our guest on the show today, Harry Halpin, CEO and co-founder of Nym Technologies, a startup building a decentralized mixnet to end mass surveillance. Prior to founding Nym, he was a senior research scientist at MIT, where he led the standardization of the Web Cryptography API across all browsers at W3C, and at Inria de Paris, where he led interdisciplinary research on socio-technical systems and privacy. Also has a Ph.D. in Informatics from the University of Edinburgh and teaches cryptocurrency at the American University of Beirut. Super pumped to have this lad on. Harry, welcome to the show, my friend. How you doing?
Great to be here. This is my first time on your show, but I'm glad to hear you're interested in privacy, because that's what we do at Nym. So we can go deep into any part of it you're interested in.
I love that. First, we got to get to know you a little bit before we jump into Nym, which is the bread and butter of the show. I have a Lebanese background. That's where you see this curly hair and the chest hair, which is obviously being hidden, but good old Leb, classic. And my dad is half Lebanese, which makes me a quarter Lebanese, maybe an eighth Lebanese, but I digress. You teach at the American University of Beirut. How cool is that? Any cool stories from being in Lebanon? What's it like there? I've actually never been.
Yeah, so I did teach a cryptocurrency course during the kind of inflationary spike. So what was kind of interesting about a lot of critics of cryptocurrency is they say, well, why would you want cryptocurrency? Like, why would this even be interesting? Like, banks, they work perfectly fine. The dollar is perfectly stable. If I use cryptocurrency, I just would want to use USDT on Tron. So what happened in Lebanon is it's a long story, but essentially they were kind of running a Do Kwon-like Terra scheme where you would deposit money into the bank. No, they were. It's a central banker was running it. You deposit euros into the central bank. They would offer you like 20% APY. It's actually almost the same as Terra and Luna. And then this was, of course, unsustainable when people panicked and took their money out the bank. So what happened is the whole sort of Ponzi scheme, which was the Lebanese banking system, collapsed pretty rapidly. And people were unable to even get their money out the bank. Even if you were able to get your money out the bank, if you got a Lebanese lira or pound out the bank, the inflation rate was crazy. So it was like 2,000 some percent. So a cup of coffee was like 1,500, and then it was like 50,000 and like 100,000. And so what sort of happened is if you had money in cash, it became worthless, and you couldn't use your bank. People would go into banks with fake guns or even real guns to have to rob the bank to get their own money out. So obviously this is unsustainable.
Jesus.
I had a friend who was a teacher over there. He said, hey, do you know anyone who can teach cryptocurrency? And I was very sick of being stuck inside during COVID. So I went over there and gave 2 short courses on cryptocurrency at AUB, American University of Beirut, which is a very kind of nice traditional university, although having obviously rough times right now. And it was really useful for the kids. Like, we had people of all different religions, Christians, Sunni, Shia, Druze, all together, learning about cryptocurrency, working in groups, try to figure out how they could use it. And everyone's super interested in it because basically if you put money in cryptocurrency, even if cryptocurrency went down, 50%, you've got like, a 2,000% interest rate on your local currency. So inflation rate. So you can't, it's like you're going to lose money if you keep your money locally. So actually people that put money in cryptocurrency, even if it just kind of maintained value or just lost 50% of its value, typically came out better. Up. Yeah, still up compared to like your neighbors when the Fiat system collapsed. And so those kids, they did great projects. We had hackathons, we introduced them to venture capitalists, some of the same venture capitalists that funded Nym. All sorts of cool projects. I hope some of them, are trying to come to fruition and doing fundraising now. Some of the people who were in those courses went on to meet and try to work at companies, that people know, like Binance, so forth and so on. And I think it was really inspirational, but I also just want to warn people that, Lebanon, it's not better. People said, oh, they'd have to fix it. They haven't fixed it. The situation's still abysmal. And people say it can't happen here, but actually, there's no reason structurally why it can't, right? So if there was a massive loss of faith in whatever currency you happen to be in, the Eurozone currency or the dollar, you would have a lot of the same dynamics. So I think the main lesson that you should teach people is that you should never trust your own fiat currency 100%. The U.S. has special leverage to having a huge army and basic ability to force countries to do what they want, therefore print as much dollars as they want. There's not the case in Lebanon, but nonetheless, it's not clear the U.S. will always maintain its geopolitical force. And things change really quickly. You have to remember, and this all happened very quick.
Yeah.
2019, things really kicked it. 2000, I think towards the end of 2018 is when things started. And before that, Lebanon was actually pretty stable. It was actually viewed as a fairly safe place to store money, after the civil war of Lebanon. So things can change overnight and your savings can evaporate. So therefore, if you don't like cryptocurrency per se, I think it's useful to have a diversity of financial holdings. And, if you don't have that, you have all of your money in one pot, so to speak. Even if you can't imagine that the local currency your pot is in would disappear, you never know, it might. So it's really worthwhile. A lot of very intelligent, innocent people got heavily damaged. And it's interesting, like in countries like El Salvador, you have a government which explicitly supports Bitcoin, and that's great. And, they can try to force adoption kind of top down. A country like Lebanon, where the government is completely dysfunctional, doesn't really exist. The banking system has just given up all responsibility. I think the Central Bank of Lebanon is on like a Interpol wanted list right now.
Yeah.
You have no choice but to kind of do a bottom-up reconstruction of the economy. And that's where people who know how to write code, people that can use cryptocurrency, can literally deploy stable coins or other currencies with all the same properties of traditional financial systems. And you saw in Lebanon, the real problem was, so there's lots of interest in cryptocurrency. Like people like it. People that had it did lose money, unlike everyone else. But the real problem was actually getting, you can't create a real economy with cryptocurrency until people actually adopt it. And in the absence of a top-down government forcing the adoption via law, like the Bitcoin law of El Salvador, in Lebanon, the reconstruction of the economy all had to be bottom-up. And so merchants are naturally, particularly you're in the Middle East, the merchants aren't so technical, but I think that's the case everywhere. A lot of small shops, which is the majority of shops in the Middle East, I found it difficult to adopt or take in Tether or Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. And so, a lot of that really came down to usability, deployment, making it, everyone has phones, right? So everyone in the whole country, including people who are illiterate, have phones. They can use WhatsApp without knowing what the buttons, just knowing how to click on buttons. They don't need to read. So it would be totally plausible to have phone-enabled QR code-based or NFC-based cryptocurrency transactions run the economy. But the real problem is, how do you get merchant adoption and how do you make it get trust? Because, if you don't trust in cryptocurrency, the main issue we had in Lebanon was there's a lot of trust in gold, right? So people, they default to gold as their kind of reserve as choice, which, okay, better than the local Lebanese fiat, but still gold is not very portable and not easy to you can't buy food with gold very easily, to be honest, as well. So 100%.
I'd need more use cases.
Yeah, 100%. I would recommend.
Hey, see the shirt?
The anti-fiat social club. Yeah, fiat's more dangerous than people think. It's a very privileged Western viewpoint to think that our fiat systems are eternal. Even in Europe after the collapse of World War I and so forth, fiat systems are historically driven to inflationary periods. We saw after COVID and much worse if you look at the large scope of history. This seems to be baked into the kind of cyclical crisis of capital. So I would really encourage people to make sure you have enough to survive if the fiat system goes down. It sounds crazy, but I've seen it happen, and it happens to in countries that are very nice. And Lebanon is still very nice. So if people want to see what it's like to live in a country where every day the prices change, typically not in your favor. People don't even bother to write prices down because it just keeps changing so much. Lebanon's a great country to visit. It's still very safe. The people are absolutely wonderful. It's very multicultural, very peaceful, to be honest, minus whatever Israel's doing on the border, which is not so peaceful. But in the rest of the country, it's fine, and I think it's really useful for people to get experience of what hyperinflation looks like. It's not fun for anyone. And prices, they don't go down, right? So what happens is that the prices actually, if anything, when massive hyperinflation happens, the economy splits into two. You have the hyper rich who have bank accounts in Cyprus, who have holdings in Switzerland, different currencies, maybe cryptocurrency, and everyone else. Because poor people, they never have money, basically. They can survive, in their village and with their family. But the middle class just disappears completely. And those are the people that really got fleeced and lost everything in the Lebanese crisis.
Well said. Harry, let's jump before we get into Nym, let's talk about the bread and butter of the show and our overarching thesis of the show, and that is privacy. You are a true privacy guru. You and the team created a privacy-centric internet with some crazy VPN tech that is also popping off. I believe you guys are in beta, or at least launched that for a couple of users, and all of the public will have access to that soon. But before we get into this, give me your sort of overarching thesis and why you love and care about privacy so much. I think it's something incredibly powerful, and the average Joe like myself, I know that I have so many holes that I need to fill. I try to do the small things to increase my privacy, but I know as a whole, I'm still not doing everything to move the needle. Why did you get into privacy? What about privacy tickles your fancy so much? Give me your whole sort of TLDR on privacy and why it's so important in today's day and age.
Okay, so it's important to remember that historically, human beings have evolved to have a strong notion of privacy. When I talk to another human being, I assume we're at a cafe, not on a podcast. I assume that's only between you and me. There aren't, other people, possibly hundreds or thousands, listening in. I also assume that when I talk to you, I'm talking for a reason. That my information has not been given to a third party, which then may use that information, against me in a way that I may not be in my best interest. So, for example, if you look at, in the grand scope of history, if you look at the Soviet Union, you look at Nazi Germany, there have been many, many countries. There's been large surveillance apparatuses, and that the risk of being surveilled, you could be identified as a dissident and imprisoned and killed. Still this case today in countries, like Syria. And then the problem we have is that often, we are actually, as Snowden revealed, spied on every day, and our behavior is actually manipulated and shaped by large Silicon Valley companies who are monitoring all of our web traffic and web browsing, like Google or Meta, in terms of our social media traffic. And, I think that this runs a real danger for the possibility of human freedom and democracy if large amounts of the population can be spied on. And, I myself was a climate change activist. I was personally spied on by the British government. That was no fun. Caused a lot of kind of...
What?
Yeah, it's true. So, so I have some experience of what it means to be the target of surveillance. Other friends of mine, friends of Julian Assange, he was targeted as well. Obviously in jail now. So you have to be, just because, again, it's a bit like Lebanon, just because you think your fiat system is okay, doesn't mean it's going to be okay in the future. Just because you think you're not being spied on now doesn't mean that you won't be spied on in the future. You don't know. And the best way, the way that Europeans typically, and a lot of American lawyers typically approach privacy, say, well, we'll just have some rules against it. But you can never trust that the government or company or whoever your enemy is won't just break those rules. How would you know? So the only solution that makes any sense in the current landscape we have today is not political solution, but technological solutions that politically guarantee privacy by virtue of ideally strong cryptography and other privacy enhanced techniques. So, I worked in web browsers under Tim Berners-Lee, the inventor of the web, for a while. It became very clear to me while working in web browsers how they were being abused for surveillance, that we were unable to build a kind of infrastructure that protected user privacy on the classical web. So, of course, I got interested in Web3. And is there a way to build a new kind of web where users' fundamental rights and privacy are respected, and that's built into the technological backbone? As someone who is, I have a Ph.D. in computer science, and that's what I work on. As someone who's interested in this kind of solution, how can I personally use my efforts to build the kinds of software people need? So I think Snowden was a big wake-up call. But the problem hasn't been solved. We should ideally just be aware of it. And we still lack easy to use tools to make our lives privacy enhanced. I would ideally want the internet to be privacy enhanced by default. I would ideally just want to turn the internet on and not have to worry about privacy.
Well said. Folks, we got to take a quick break and give a massive shout out to our sponsor of the show, and that is the one and only Prime XBT, longtime friends of cryptonews.com and longtime friends of the Crypto News podcast. We love Prime XBT as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet. You can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XBT is also running an exclusive promotion for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. After making first deposit, you get 50% of that first deposit credited to your trading account. It can be used as a bonus for open position. The promo code is CryptoNews50. That is CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. And now back to the show with Harry. Harry, let's jump right into Nym here, the bread and butter of the show. Give us the elevator pitch, what you guys are working on, your privacy-centric internet, the ZK Nym tech that's popping off, the VPN as well. I love all of this stuff. Give us the TLDR, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty here.
So what Nym is, it's a mixnet. And a mixnet takes packets and sort of, does what it says on the tin. It mixes them. So it's like the packets are mixed up, shuffled like a deck of cards, and they're sent out. So they're encrypted. So they all look the same. They're mixed, and then they're sent to different, what was called mixed nodes, which are just servers in a decentralized network, before being sent out to the internet. So what that does is that whenever you use the internet without Nym, the timing and the amount of packets that you send over the internet are revealed to everyone, including information like your IP address, which could more or less geolocate your neighborhood, and kind of more or less what you're doing. That's all sent out, and anyone can observe it, not just the NSA, but a guy at your local cafe. Nym hides all of that, and this makes it like a kind of super VPN or powerful decentralized VPN. We're putting a VPN kind of front end on top of it to make it easy to use as a VPN, because a lot of people do use VPNs. And we've added in zero-knowledge technology using ZK Nyms to allow people to access the network privately while still, for example, proving they paid for it, or proving that, they're not from a sanctioned country, or proving, they're not American, so forth and so on. So we've got some pretty cool zero-knowledge tech. We've got a really nice mixnet. We've kind of put them together, and we've decentralized them using blockchain technology.
I love that. Can you walk me through the ZK Nyms? Is there anything different? Again, I'm not a big tech guy, so my apologies here, Harry. I understand what ZK tech is. I mean, we've had some incredible guests who've come on the show and explained it in layman terms to people like myself, where, again, it's pretty bonkers to understand through and through on the tech side of things. Is there anything different between sort of ZK tech, ZK rollups, and ZK Nyms?
Yeah, so we're not a rollup. We use a standard Cosmos blockchain. And that Cosmos blockchain stores the servers in the mixnet and their IP addresses, so you can access them, and their key materials, so you can encrypt things to them. And we're not standard ZK tech. Standard zero-knowledge tech is technology based on Groth, what's called Groth 16, modifications of Groth 16, which is a ZK snark system. So these systems take generic programs and can basically compile them with what's called zero knowledge, and then prove things about the inputs, the programs, without revealing the exact input that makes it true. So, for example, I can prove that I have a key without giving you the key. That's the easy one. And there's a bunch of other stuff I can prove that I have this balance or I have this much reserves in my cryptocurrency. And so on that level, standard zero knowledge tech is pretty powerful stuff, but it comes with a huge disadvantage, which it's hard for people to understand, particularly programmers. You have to think about things in terms of circuits and polynomials. Not so easy. It's very slow. It's not super fast. Sending just a Zcash transaction will just take longer than a standard Bitcoin transaction. So what ZK NIMs are is a different technology stack that uses zero knowledge properties is based on the technology stack of what's called anonymous credentials. So anonymous credential technology basis, I would like to prove something simple about myself, like my age or my identity, whatever. And we're not going to really do computation over it. It's just like you're a programmer, it's like an array, a JSON blob. And that we can just use that like a normal array or list of items and selectively disclose or prove in zero knowledge aspects of that list without basically running a whole computer program. And that's pretty cool because that's really fast. And the reason why we invented ZK NIMs is because we needed something that was really fast. We needed something about milliseconds. And why do we want something down in the milliseconds range? Because effectively, the first use case of ZK Nym technology is how can I pay for this anonymous network without doxing myself, without revealing my identity. So we want people to pay for it, but we don't want that payment linked to their usage. That would defeat the whole purpose of an anonymous network. So we use ZK NIMs so that people can prove that they paid. They can prove whatever else is needed by compliance across whatever countries you're in, but you don't have to give out your whole identity. And we can do that very quickly using this anonymous credential technology, which, like mixnets, were invented by David Chaum. And similar, mixnets and anonymous credential technology, it's very old. It's older than traditional zero knowledge work, dates from the 80s from David Chaum. And what we've done is we've used blockchain technology to decentralize that tech. So historically, anonymous credential systems were centralized. Microsoft even had one. The Dutch government used one around COVID passports. I don't agree with these use cases necessarily, but they were there. But they've always been centralized. And so what we've done is we've created like decentralized versions of this technology where a blockchain is used to do, keep the mixed node working, keep the ZK NIM system to prevent double spending. Very basic stuff, but again, we think basic works and basic scales, and we don't have to have like a mathematical breakthrough to use our system, nor do we have to have the users of our system be ZK experts. We want the users of our system to pay for our system in zero knowledge without knowing anything about zero knowledge, without even necessarily knowing anything more than maybe something about Bitcoin, something about maybe they can even just use their credit card to pay. But we don't want that credit card information. We just want to know that they paid. And that's kind of how the ZK NIM tech works and why we built it.
So cool and so useful. I'm a big VPN guy, Harry. I love VPNs. There is one on right now. I have VPNs on all the time. I do pay too much for VPNs, and hopefully I will not have to anymore.
How much do you pay? Just wondering.
I'm paying $16.99 a month.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. It is. It works for me. No free ads, so I'm not going to tell you who I use, but I've tried a couple different ones. This one I like the best. But again, $16.99 US a month, a little pricey, but again, you can't really put a price on privacy.
I recommend people use VPNs, but you have to be very careful with VPNs, right? Like Molvad is what I tend to use. But the problem with VPN technology is what the VPN technology is, it takes all the internet traffic from your computer and just routes it to someone else's computer. Okay, and that computer then routes it out. So that hides your IP address. But what most people do not know about VPNs is that VPN provider knows everything about what you're doing. They know who you are. They probably even have your credit card details.
Come on.
And they can link that. Yeah, they do. And they can link that to your Google search, to all of your, or DuckDuckGo or whatever. They can link that to your social media usage. So while you change your IP address, maybe you can download Netflix easier. that VPN provider really, has you by the balls, so to speak. And that's quite dangerous because while ideally our VPN provider would be trustworthy, we don't know. So for example, you use the VPN providers, the infamous case being a VPN provider called Hide My Ass, hilariously.
Yeah.
They handed all their user data over, right? To the U.S. government over, VPN providers can often even sell your data. We've seen cases of this with some of the sketchier VPNs.
Wow.
So the problem with VPNs is that they're centralized, and because they're centralized, they may not be trustworthy. So we decided that, Nym is this cool mixnet, but should be easy to use as a VPN. So Nym VPN is just a front end that looks like a VPN, acts like a VPN, should work at least in the beginning on desktop and Android and eventually iOS to allow you to just turn on, flip a button, and then your traffic will go through a mixnet or a decentralized VPN. We kind of have two privacy settings. One for people don't want to be super private, which is a mixnet, which has all the mixing that I described earlier, which makes your data even more private. And each packet is routed individually versus a decentralized VPN where the packets are not routed individually. They're routed in circuits or symmetrically, let's say. The decentralized VPN would offer kind of less privacy, but more speed because obviously mixing traffic, mixing it all together, moving per packet's a bit slower. But we want users to have the option to use both. And we think users should be able to at least have a VPN where they don't trust a single third party. So by sheer virtue of having the ability to log in to different entry points and different exit points ran by individuals who you don't know, just kind of generally makes your life easier. Now, I think there is a question here, which is it better to basically trust a crowd of many people you don't know rather than one person that you do know? And that's, depends. I mean, I know the CEO of Molvat, so I like him and I'm happy to use his network. But to be honest, I'd rather not have to trust him. And I'd rather be able to use a network where I can remain anonymous if I use a mixnet, or at least not have a single trusted third party if I use a decentralized VPN. And we do think there'll be economic advantages of this as well. So, for example, the VPN market is it's a bit like, it's not a free market. People get stuck in VPNs. There's tons of VPN ads. VPN providers are not necessarily encouraged to upgrade their software often. A lot of people they just have OpenVPN. They don't have newer tech like WireGuard, which Nym uses. And the reason for this is that, it's not a fair market. So, what we have to do is the cool thing about decentralized VPN is anyone can turn on a computer, anyone can run a VPN node. So we think that will have two advantages. One, it will have higher geographic distribution than current VPNs, right? So that, let's say I need a node in Zanzibar, or I need a node in, I can set a node up in Zanzibar. No, I mean, that's actually a real case. So the Tanzanian government, which controls Zanzibar, has recently turned off, I think last October, tried to make VPNs illegal. So there's a huge demand for VPNs actually in Tanzania. That being said, I can also, having a blockchain in a fair market, you can consider the decentralized VPN to be kind of market for bandwidth, and markets which are open tend to have lower prices. So you only have one or two providers providing the service, then they can set prices. They can set them against you. They can say, well, we're going to charge our users $15 a month or $18. What can you do? But if you have a VPN where you can basically always find the lowest price with the highest quality of service, and that's set by market mechanisms built into a multi-sided market created using blockchain technology for bandwidth, I think that's great. The starting price will probably be, we have to set a starting price. So I think the starting price will be set probably to something pretty cheap, like $7. But I think it could even go down as the hardware costs go down and bandwidth gets cheaper over time. Because you notice bandwidth is cheaper all the time, but your VPN subscription is not getting cheaper. So something is, you can tell something's wrong there.
Hey, Harry, is it true that, I know this is true, but I was sort of baffled when I heard this. Mm-hmm. There's a finite amount of VPNs in the world.
Yeah, there are. Yeah. And that's a problem. So there's only so many VPN servers. You can run your own, but it's a pain. And so part of the goal of the Nym VPN system is that anyone can run a server. It should be easy to set up. If you don't have to run your own, you can just use it. You can use someone else's server. If you want to run your own, you can. And that would be great. And then we want to encourage people to set up servers in places where there's lots of usage. So for example, a lot of Chinese people, they probably need VPN access. That's a bit dangerous. I think it's maybe even illegal without the right license. But, if there's lots of users and there's a free market VPN, maybe people will get that license. Maybe they'll take that risk of even doing it without a license and set their own servers up. And, even when I go to China, I often just set my own server up and use that. And that's not easy. And we want to make that process as easy as possible. And that should, there's only going to be so many VPNs at any given moment. Theoretically, if there's not a VPN server that does what you want it to do, you should be able to either set it up yourself or say, I'll pay for it, and then someone else will set it up. And, there's a lot of system administrators that have these skills, which for whatever bad luck can't be employed by Google or whatever because they're not born in the US or Europe. But they're very skilled technically. Technical skill is now huge. I mean, you're in Mexico. It's getting better and better at the global south, but there's still a lack of good jobs. So we want to have skilled system administration be able to make enough money to survive by just running VPN services in whatever country they live in and have a good life. And then consumers in those countries should be able to get the best VPN quality of service with the lowest price. And we think these are very solvable problem. We've hired a bunch of people to work on it. Folks from Proton Mail, folks from Revolut, of course, our research team from MIT and University College London, École Polytechnique de Lausanne. So we'll have KU Leuven. So we'll have probably, the VPN technology has barely changed except for WireGuard since the 90s. And it was basically broken then. So we really want to, even if our technology doesn't work, we still want to really take the technology that people use for it. It makes their experience faster. It makes it more decentralized. It should be great. Makes it more private.
I love that. Harry, you've been on a roll here. We are getting a little tight for time. Last question before we wrap up. What does the future of privacy look like? And tie this into Nym. How do you see, humans, maybe robots over the next 5-10 years, privacy-wise? A lot of things have changed. We have AI popping off. Is there going to be any crazy pieces of new tech besides Nym that really allow us to be more private, more decentralized, have control over our own data? I'd love if you could talk about this from the software and hardware perspective. Give me some hot takes in regards to privacy in the future looking forward.
So I didn't do my Ph.D. in cryptography. I did my Ph.D. in artificial intelligence. I worked in language models. And I think it's something important to be said. There's both negative and a positive out of AI. So the positive, which is it's a great learning tool. It can probably replace search engines. I think people should have access to it. People in the global south, it should be ran by as many people as possible, not just a few big companies like OpenAI. And so I'm a big fan of AI. I think it has tremendous possibilities for good. That being said, AI, when you're building that training data set, is basically gobbling up as much data as it can. So AIs are built on surveillance. They're built on the surveillance of people's personal behavior, and they're built on the surveillance of text that people make. And this is quite dangerous. And I would like to live in a world where the AIs are fueled from public data, like, for example, Wikipedia. So if an AI can be built on top of Wikipedia, great. If AI can be built on top of all the open source work in the world, great. But I don't want that AI accidentally sucking in my personal data or anything sensitive and putting it in its language model. So I think in the future, we'll have a world like this where artificial intelligence will become very common, but we'll also, ideally using blockchain technology, have rights over our own data to prevent the surveillance of our own data. And so that AIs can be fed off training data, which is open and free and public. And that would be, I think it would result in a lot more comfort using the internet and using artificial intelligence. So I'm a big fan of AI, but again, you have to remember that these things are surveillance mechanisms, unless proper safeguards can be put in, and not AI safety, but just actually control of your personal data. And control of your personal data has to be technologically backed. So I think in the future, we'll hopefully see more technology that allows people to understand how their data is being used to prevent that data being used. And it's not just mixnets. There's a large number of technologies that need to be explored here. We're exploring the kind of mixnet VPN space, but you need more work in zero knowledge, which we're seeing happen. to basically allow people to do verifiable computation anonymously on data. And that can be used for great use cases. Other technology which is less explored is homomorphic encryption, which is great technology. You can use it to do kind of mathematics on encrypted data that allows you to do machine learning on data without knowing or revealing things about the data that shouldn't be revealed. There's techniques like differential privacy, almost running a mixnet in reverse, where you essentially want to access a database, but you don't want your access to the database to reveal the data that you're retrieving. There's even technology which is theoretically better in the mixed nets, DC nets, also invented by David Chaum. DC stands for Dynamic Cryptographer Networks. They're much slower, but they use secure multi-party computation to give you even stronger privacy guarantees than mixed nets, just they're very slow.
Right.
It's not clear how they scale. So I think you have all these cool technologies, and the real danger we have, someone that worked in Silicon Valley for years, is that, all the bright minds should not be working on surveillance tech. They should be working on blockchain and privacy tech. Even with AI, honestly, unless you work for Google or OpenAI, you're kind of screwed. You're never going to be able to train data sets as a startup as big as those by the companies. And if you use the company's APIs, you're dependent on them 100%, just like you'd be dependent on trusting your VPN provider. That blockchain technology and crypto technology can be studied and used by normal people who are interested in technology just on their laptops, and they can build world-changing tech. So I think we need to see more people working on privacy tech and crypto tech, and that this technology can be used to make sure that AI is used in some sort of beneficial way for humanity, and not in a way to surveil and control us. And I think there's a real danger our world kind of ends up in that direction unless programmers and cryptocurrency fanatics, other people really kind of get their act together and push hard.
Incredible. Harry, you were absolutely on fire all episode. What a treat. I learned a ton. Definitely have some homework to do. Really appreciate your time here, man. This was great. Had a blast.
It's been really fun, and hope you enjoy the rest of the time in Mexico. Sounds amazing. Much better weather over there than here in Europe.
100%.
So, and I would also recommend, to be honest, as a company, we stay out the U.S. Obviously, the United States is not happy with cryptocurrency. But I think the global South, countries like Mexico, even the Middle East, they could really use cryptocurrency and AI technologies to leapfrog and get more autonomy and independence, which would be good because that's where the majority of people in the world are located.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for your time. And if you have any questions, you can always go to our website. That's nymtech.net, nymtech.net. And all the data, our papers, our software, it's easy to download there. And if you want to go straight to the VPN, we're taking on, people can sign up. Could just go to nymvpn.com. That's NYMVPN, not surprisingly, .com. And you can sign up and you'll be the first to get on board. Thanks so much.
Folks, what an episode with Harry Halpin, CEO and founder of the one and only Nym Tech. Guys, go follow him on Twitter. It is at Nym Project. And go follow Harry as well. He's dropping fire all the time at Harry Halpin. As always, I will include everything in the show notes. Folks, if you enjoyed this one, I hope you did. Please do subscribe. It would mean the world to my team and I. Speaking to the team, love you guys so much. Thank you for everything. You Stas, my amazing sound editor. You are the man. Thank you as always. And back to the listeners, love you guys. Thank you for listening. Keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.